Hey everyone, this is Side Projects for Fun and Profit 2020 edition. Actually, the second one, I did the one earlier on lockdown in April. So this is again, a condensed version of the talk I've been doing the past few years when we're usually at Best Buy, but hopefully it's still useful. I'll have this contact info up again at the end of the show. But please, feel free to DM me. That's my Twitter up there. Also, my email address. Any questions you have, if you want to brainstorm some stuff, facing any problems, want to connect with other people. I'm looking forward to hearing about all the many projects you're working on or thinking about working on. So usually, I'd like to just to frame this talk. Like, what is a side project? Obviously, there's um, the cliches, like these are projects you work on the nights and weekends, but obviously uh, you're smart enough to know that there's a lot of overlap between straight up traditional side projects, and your regular full-time bootstrapped company that you're trying to start in terms of technology, in terms of how to get ideas, how to get users, product development. The cost of developing and deploying an app or project is so low now. With everything moving to the cloud, it's really a golden age to try new ideas, see what sticks, and make some money. So, just a little bit about me. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm in St. Paul now for a few years. I was in San Francisco for a number of years, going through the cycles of small startups to acquisitions and getting sick of that and going back into smaller companies. Currently, through an acquisition, I'm at Caterpillar in their little digital labs team as an engineering manager. But I also work on a few things on the side. One of them, and I won't go through these. I won't go too deep into these because it's really not. I'm not here to plug these things. But FatCap is something that should be going live in the app stores. It's in review this week. I demoed this a mini demo last summer. Really fun event. Also, Ballet in Motion is a online course platform that I built with a friend of mine for her ballet company. It has got a number of features that you don't find in other online course platforms. And as you can see, your project doesn't have to look super slick or modern or doesn't have to be designed by a designer, but it does a job. It makes money, and it's being sold into local universities. So. And these are things. The skin is always something you can change later. And your project doesn't always have to be there to be profitable. This is something I pulled up in an hour, really. Not here to make money, but there's technologies that are running behind the scenes that could be used to make money in the future. So why these side projects? Again, more cliches. It's like you're here to scratch an itch or play with some new technology. I always like to put this slide up, which really just says if you should be able to if you find something useful for you, you should be able to find at least 100 users out of the 2-3 billion plus connected people on the planet to pay $10 a month, and with that math, you are pulling in $1,000 a month right there. That you have full control of, that you can generate yourself without any dependencies on anybody else. Now, there's some obvious benefits to that, but first time I did this presentation was 2017, a few months after the last presidential inauguration. And what I said then was, no matter how you feel about the state of the world, there is power in and independence in making, building seeing your idea get to fruition and making some money to give you what optionality. Then you can be wherever you want. You're making money. You're not depending on the man or the woman to to give you a paycheck, and you can be anywhere. And you have a buffer against. This is kind of I consider this a buffer against whatever's happening in the world. That was 2017. This is 2020, and I won't belabor that point, but I think you can tell where I'm thinking there. Um, this blog post is about 10 years old, but the point of this is really, a lot of big companies, start off as side projects, or they look like toys. Airbnb looked like a toy. Facebook was originally, basically a hookup app. YouTube was actually a dating app for the founders in its early days. So things evolve, things change, and what if you think your idea sounds like a toy, it 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 may not be. It could grow into something much bigger. So let's talk about, who else is doing this? Not just you, me, or the other people watching this broadcast. Um, there are lots of places to get inspired and find like-minded people. And this can be really motivating. You should check out Indie Hackers. It's a website. It's a forum, discussion forum, also a very useful podcast. You can find real founders in discussion boards, posting actually their real revenue numbers. Sometimes self-reported, but this is Indie Hackers is not owned by Stripe, so you can a lot of founders connect to their actual Stripe account, and you can see their verified revenue numbers, which I find quite inspiring. And founders are super helpful. There's not just Indie Hackers. There are tons of maker communities for whatever niche you have, and I would say don't be afraid to reach out to anyone. Every founder is usually um, privately needing to vent about something and wants to help somebody else avoid the mistakes that they make. And we make mistakes all the time. What you don't want is some a consultant with 30 years of experience trying to sound relevant and sell you whatever whatever advice they have. You talk to real founders who are operating right now. So let's get a little bit more tactical. What should you work on? You might know, you might not. The classical business school advice is, work on something unique with a large TAM, total addressable market, and low competition. But there are some, I think, other more useful places, useful ways to kind of like get the creative juices flowing. Um, Most ideas that you have, uh, somebody has already I would say somebody has already tried it. There's even likely been, a full-on company that's tried to execute your idea. As you know, most companies die, and some of the major reasons are things that are not talked about. For example, one of the reasons, a big reason companies die, and you don't hear about, is, let's say, that founders just can't stand each other anymore. That's actually a real thing. Tons of companies are zombie companies, which means the founders are burnt out. Revenue is flattening, not growing anywhere, so they can't hire anybody. They can't innovate. You know, they're getting bored. Investors might have kind of like investors might basically own the company because the company's not making money. People keep dumping money into it, and ownership goes to some investor who's just making bad shots. I won't belabor that. There's more reasons. There's lots of reasons a company can go bad. It's not necessarily the idea, and the idea might just be waiting for somebody like you to help execute it properly. Um, this is a site called YC List, and this is basically, you can filter. This is every company that's gone through Y Combinator, one of the premier accelerators in the world, and you can sort by dead companies and just scroll through this and get inspired by things that may ideas that may have just not uh, you know may have been ahead of their time, or may have died for the wrong reasons. uh, App Store ratings and reviews, another great treasure trove. Let's say you have an idea and you think you have a competitor. Well, go through all the reviews and find out all the things that people hate about it, and potentially make something better, or focus on a simpler product that focuses on the problems that people are really facing. Um, Glassdoor, again, it's fascinating because this is where you hear about secret layoffs or creepy founders or just other things that are going wrong in a company that could spell doom for it. And then you can kind of reach in and take advantage. A great place, a source of ideas is volunteering or working at a nonprofit. I'm on the board of a local arts education nonprofit called Articulture in the Seward neighborhood, and that does art classes. And I've created a bunch of Shopify plugins that I can now sell to other e-commerce stores around the world. Um, and that obviously helps art culture, but helps other owners, and I can profit from as well. This is kind of a win-win-win. You're basically giving back. You are, you're giving back to society. You're helping a nonprofit. They have the same problems and pain points as for-profit companies, and so this is a really great way to get in and really experiment and come up with a get an idea and execute. So let's get a little bit nerdier now. So how should you build something? So I kind of look at three types of people who know how to code already, people who don't know how to code but want to learn, and people who just are will know that they don't ever want to learn to code. And this should not stop anybody from starting a company or starting a side project. First, I want to go through point out that pretty much everything that you use is built on some kind of a pattern. Everything is a front end to a database. And that goes for Airbnb, which is basically a bunch of bookings and listings and users and the connections between the two. It's really just a prettier version of the database. Pinterest, similar thing, pins, users, and kind of the relations between the two. And it's just showing you, a pretty version of that. Um, that if you can think of your project, if you can simplify your project to a very basic model, it can help you kind of figure out what tools you need to, or what frameworks you need to kind of to make it live. Some other random tips I'm going to throw here, flying through this, but especially for so-called experienced coders like myself, is use what you know, use what you already know. If you try to resist the temptation of just scratching an itch and trying to use the fanciest new framework around, because you will inevitably hit some wall on something you didn't consider, some bug in the frameworks or library, and you will just get frustrated. Use what you know, and you can always change things later. You don't want things to sit on the shelf because you got hung up on something that's totally unrelated to the value you want to offer people. Another thing is, don't over optimize early. I see a lot of people building side projects and then focusing all their time on how to make it scale to 1 billion users. You don't really need to worry about the good problems yet. Just don't do anything totally stupid. And it's actually now very hard to do something very stupid. You should be fine for quite a while. The best way to write code is to avoid writing as much code as possible. And there are platforms like, for example, Firebase, which kind of a la carte, you can add functionality to your app that you don't have to code. For example, authentication, the database, performance monitoring, even machine learning, um, in-app messaging, push notifications. I would highly recommend looking at that. Amplify framework is kind of Amazon AWS's version of that. I use this all the time as well. Um, Expo is a platform, basically a framework on top of something called React Native, which is the mobile version of React, and lets you write iOS and Android apps with basically a single code base. And Expo makes things even easier. So how do you make things look good? I mean, there's things like Bootstrap, now Tailwind, and Material Design. These are all things you can Google, but they'll make your app look maybe not obviously super cutting edge, not like hiring a total designer, but it'll make your app look good enough, even if it looks a little bit derivative. It's much better than going down some CSS rabbit hole, which can again lead you to lose interest and put your project on the shelf. Let's talk about learning to code a little bit. You do not need to drop $10,000 to $20,000 on some boot camp. There are plenty of resources. I'm not even going to go through. I'm going to go through hardly any here. Free Code Camp is one. YouTube is still an underrated source. It's not a bunch of randos, throwing up random videos. These are people who make money through consulting or some other, some other way. But the way they get the way they get leads in is they create really high quality tutorials on YouTube that I've learned a lot of stuff using, for example, German guys' videos. Um, there are people throwing in clones. This is a 73 video playlist of somebody cloning the entire everything about Slack. There is a similar thing for Uber. Um, there are developer streams where people literally live stream themselves coding. You can watch the code and you can watch them actually think through debugging, think through, remember things that they ran into years ago that are helping them now. Just random asides, things they're finding by Googling around. So this is like the next best thing to, sitting next to somebody in an office, which none of us can do right now. So the big tech companies like Google and Amazon, they now have amazing teams of developer relations people who are creating their own videos. They're getting in on the action as well, and these are super super useful to watch. So what I do is I just subscribe to a bunch of my favorite ones, and learn something new really every night. So codeless, codeless is another movement that to say you don't want to code. You don't have to code for a lot of ideas. There are ways to put a static site up, get an e-commerce shop up, have a database going. For example, that sick.watch, the database for that is just Google Sheets. Google Sheets powering in real time a front end, and it's really easy. I can just update if I find. As soon as Mike Pence announces that he has coronavirus, I can just update that Google Sheet and it'll update the site immediately. Launching. So launching, you don't need to, and I'd recommend don't wait to run out some space and do a big launch party. Go through something. Google this, the side project marketing checklist. This is basically a long list of things that some obvious things, some not so obvious things about how to about where to submit your app, making sure you log down your social medias, how to get email signups, hit app stores that you might not have heard about. Amazing, just amazing list of you just go through that one by one, and you'll be guaranteed to get at least some users coming in, getting you early feedback on your project. Um, there are app stores that are not just the traditional iOS and Google Play app stores. If you've got an e-commerce related project, Shopify has its own app store with basically your target market looking at it every day. Slack has an app store. Stripe has an app store. Alexa, Alexa actually has an app directory too. Lots of places where you can post your project for free to people actually looking for solutions. Let's talk a little bit about Facebook and Twitter advertising. Everyone hears about kind of you hear about this in the news and on various Netflix documentaries every week. But here, a lot of people don't really see the UI in the back end. You can. I was doing some ads for example, that arts nonprofit. You can actually target down to obviously by geography, age, and whatnot, but you can also target to interests. Somebody's interested in fine art, life events, whether they're away from home, whether they just got a new job, whatever there's a lot of behaviors and traits that might be applicable to what you're looking for. Is it evil? Is your project evil? I think it's more evil to waste my time with a bunch of random ads versus giving me something that I might actually be interested in. Twitter has a similar thing. And for example, here you can target. Let's say you're doing a Slack competitor. You can actually target to everyone who follows Slack on Twitter. Now that might not get everybody who's in your target market, but you can have that going in literally 2 minutes. And I guess I'll leave you all with one last slide, which is this is kind of the screen time app on an iPhone. You'd be surprised at how much. Maybe you won't be, but there's always time that you can get back in a week. that you can devote to a project. And I just recommend taking into account taking account as to where you're spending your time, and can you take a half hour, move that up to an hour every week or every day, ideally, and picking at a project that you're really interested in, there you can find at least 100 users, pay you 10 to whatever dollars a month, and get yourself a little optionality, a little buffer from the world around you. And here again is my contact information. Email, Twitter is at the bottom there. Please, yeah, just reach out with anything. There's no stupid questions, and yeah, I'd love to help. And yeah, I'd love to connect other folks in the community and hear about what you're working on. That's it for me, and I look forward to seeing if there's any questions. No questions. Everyone's busy coding, I see. Okay, this is great. I usually totally go over, so never. I usually don't have time for questions, so this would be great. Maybe you're all trying to follow me on Twitter. Oh yeah, no worries. I'm looking for the art of. I'm looking forward to the art of computer science. The next presentation. I will be sharing the slides. Probably posting them on probably through my Twitter. Have I tried any no-code platforms? Not things like there's like bubble.is. I haven't built anything, or Webflow. I haven't tried a Webflow either. Yeah, so monetize. Things like ballet in motion. There is basically. I think we gave them. No, I think actually there's no trial for that. It's you're basically, this is people at Minnesota State and Olaf who are paying. They're paying at their bookstore, getting an access code, and then plugging it into the site, or they're subscribing right away. Backcap will be totally free, and I'll figure out later how to monetize that. But that's more of a land grab situation. Um, any stories about moving a side project to a main project? Hopefully soon. Most uh, things I've worked on in the past. I mean, basically, I haven't. Let's just say I haven't quit a job um, for a side project yet, but maybe one day. I'm sure a lot of people watching here might have stories on that, and we can talk about that on Twitter. In promoting our thing, do you recommend any particular site? I would go through that side project marketing checklist, and then it depends on what your project is. If it's e-commerce related, obviously there, like I showed the Shopify App Store. It really depends on what it is. I mean, reach out on Twitter or something. We can maybe talk about that. And for monetization, by the way, I've in the past I've done like free trial stuff too. And don't think that you don't get hung up on monetization. You can always change that later. Everyone's changing pricing all the time. Everyone's adding trials, removing trials. That stuff is never set in stone. It's always up for experimentation. Any thoughts on pushing through fatigue on a project to actually finish it, and also how to decide what done is? Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. So I would say, uh, have a checklist, break down your tasks as small as possible, keep them, look at them every day, prioritize them, and just throw out anything, just get a minimum viable product. It's a cliche, but get the minimum thing that you need up there. Break down the task into smaller chunks. Don't just say, I'm going to have like monetization. That break that down into smaller chunks, and you will, once you accomplish smaller chunks, you will feel more motivated to get to the next thing. The thing that fatigues people is when everything just seems kind of overwhelming. A feature just seems completely overwhelming. Have as few features as possible to get things out there, um, and break those features down into small pieces to feel like you're having tiny wins, and then get as many people testing as possible. Because you will, like, if you're like me, you will not. You will focus on things that the users are not focusing on, and vice versa. So, but hit me up on Twitter or email, and we can go into these in more detail. Good questions. I'm glad I didn't go over this time. All right, I'll just awkwardly wave until we're done.